This is where we're.
Yeah.
Okay. Come on, children.
Aren't you in the wrong class? Aren't you across the hall?
I'm here.
Oh.
I'm here. Metal is my life.
Now it is. Okay, so these ends were cut with a shear, so we're going to have to true them up a bit and then measure. So I'm just going to show you a plain band ring that's smooth and wide. But you can do other variations. If you wanted to cut this in half or in 3 and make stacking rings, that's entirely possible. If you wanted to do texturing first before you measure the length, you can do that because you want to do that before you measure because it's going to stretch. So you could do some hammering textures or whatever. You can do letter stamps and do words or names. And you could do roll printing, but ease up on the tension because you don't want your material to get too thin. So those are all other options. But I'm just going to show you the simple version. So I've hammered it flat. Yours might not be perfectly flat yet. So just make sure it's flat. So this is 1 millimeter thick. I wouldn't recommend going thinner than this for a ring, but you could go thicker. So we're going to true up one of our ends first with the flat file. So we're going to use this nice flat file with the blue handle. And we're going to set our ring blank up here. And we want it to be straight. We don't want it to be this way or this way. We want it as straight as we possibly can. I like to put my finger behind. And I like to have a bit peeking above the wood, but not too much. If you have too much, it tends to kind of wobble as you're filing. So just a bit peeking up above the wood. And now I'm going to hold my file parallel to the desktop. So it's always going to be parallel the whole pass, and then we'll lift off. We don't want to round our edges by ending like that. So we're going to be on top of the whole piece, and keep your arm in that natural sewing direction that you do. And I'm looking at my reflection, so I can see where the file already removed some material. You can adjust your light source so you can see it better. And I'm not pushing hard. So just controlled strokes, lift off, set it back down, keep your file parallel to the desktop, and lift off. And don't over push, just keep it gentle. So I'm looking at my reflection till it's all one plane all the way across. So I'm bringing everything down, all the high spots down to the lowest spot, the lowest area. So you can see my reflection.
Oh, yes.
And pass that around. There's no facets, it's all one smooth plane.
Yeah, you can see it on it.
So that's what you're looking for. So now we're going to check if it's square. So because this is just a nice smooth edge, we can use that against. So we're going to have our metal behind, and we're going to look from the front, and we're going to check if that flat area is square to the side. So it's slightly higher on this side than the other side.
Yes.
Just slightly.
It's so hard to see. Like a millimeter? Like
Not even.
right,
No, maybe 0.2
Oh,
of
yeah,
a
no.
millimeter.
Yeah.
You might want to come closer.
It depends on, yeah. My angle.
So I must have been holding my ring blank just slightly off kilter. So I'm gonna take note of the high spot, and I'm gonna hold this straight. And now my file should be hitting the high spot only, if I have it held right. So we're just bringing that high spot down, so everything is one level again. Just check if I'm on the right track here. It's a little bit more off that high spot. So I'm happy with it now. I'll pass that around.
I'm happy with it too.
So the square works very well if it's a flat edge, but it's also up to you. You could cut the edge of your metal, the sides of your ring. You could make a wavy ring, and that would be cut off. So then you'd have not a flat edge. Or when you roll print it, it might go veer off a bit. So you're going to pick your best edge in that case. You'll pick your best edge or one of the edges, and you'll mark it on your ring blank, and you'll have that side always against the flat area on the square, no matter which end you're checking, so that's your reference point. So now I have that one end nice and trued up and square, and I'm going to measure my ring blank now. So I've taken it apart. I'm going to use the calipers. So this is to open and close, this thing here for your thumb. And I'm going to open it to the exact amount of my paper. And then I'm just going to gently tighten this screw, just till it touches. You don't want to over tighten the screw here, because it can strip really easy. So now I'm holding the caliper really close so that I can rest my hand on the table. Instead of holding it up here, I want to hold it against. And we're going to score a line on this end with this jaw there. So we're going to go across in a parallel manner. We don't want to be in one spot and make an arc. We want to go across the top and the bottom at the same time. So this is just rubbing against the bottom that I just filed. And I'll go over that a few times to make my line deeper, so I can see it better. So I'm going to saw my metal off right on that line. So someone left the saw blade in here. I think I'll just use it.
And you're going to saw straight.
We're going to saw straight. Mm-hmm. So
But I don't think I could saw straight.
You're going to go really slow.
Yes, okay.
And yeah. And you're not going to push against the metal. So I'm putting my fingernail up where the line is. And I'm just have my saw at an angle to make that groove. And now that I have my groove established, I'm way up in the V because I have just a small end there rather than being over here. And closer into the V. And you could adjust your light source so you can see your line better. So I'm going really gentle. I'm wiping the debris off as I go so I can see my line. Like I'm really relaxed in how I'm holding the handle. And nice and controlled movement. Okay, so you can save your scrap for something else later. So I've sawn that across. So now I'm going to file it so that it's single plane again and square with my side. So I'm going to hold it as straight up and down as I can. A little bit peeking above. Set my file on and go across just gently. I can see that that's the highest spot because that's what it removed first. Keep your file parallel to the bench top. So I'm just bringing down the high spots. So nice and controlled. If you can look at my reflection, you can see what I'm removing. Just keep going till everything is one level. Almost there. Okay, now I'm going to check if it's square. And I think it's not square. This side is slightly higher, just a smidge. I'm going to take a little bit off of this side. So if I have it held straight up and down, my file should hit the high spot first. You could even put marker on the whole thing to make sure that is where you're hitting first. So I think that's good. Okay, so if you have done hammering or roll printing, you're going to need to anneal your metal at this point before you bend it because it's been work hardened. But this hasn't been work hardened, it's still dead soft, so I can go ahead and bend it. Before I do that though, sometimes when you file, a bit of a burr is left behind, or like a little edge of metal that you can just kind of flick off or pick off. So you want to make sure that burrs, kind of like when you drill too, you get a bit of a burr there. Okay, so I'm going to use a ring mandrel, and I'm going to place the back or the inside of my ring against the mandrel, and just with my thumbs, I'm going to make a U shape. So I did part way, I'm going to alternate because this is a taper. And then you can also squeeze it this way. So you want it to be a nice gentle U shape, a nice gentle curve here. We don't want a sharp curve. And we want each end to end at the same height. So I'm just going to pull this one in a bit more. So you want something like that.
Is that regardless of size?
Regardless of size, you'll just, if it's a smaller ring, you'll just be further up at the top.
It's a smaller U.
Yeah, a smaller U, but still a nice gentle curve.
So if it had been treated and you have to, what is it? Anneal it, you'll discuss how to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just heating it up to a dull red glow, and then you're going to pickle and stuff. You'll get that when I do the soldering part. You'll
Okay.
understand. Yeah, and then it'll become soft like this is again. So now at this point, I'm going to bend it. I have a diagram on the board there. I'm going to bend the ends slowly in till they're straight across from each other. We don't want them angled up, and we don't want them angled down. They'll go straight across. So I'm going to use the half round plier to do that. Half round, round on one side, flat on the other. And the round portion will be on the interior. This has a wider curve for larger rings. If you have a tinier ring, you'll use something like that. You can pass that one around. So I brought out all the half rounds. They're on the table there, so they vary in shape. So you might want to come closer. So at this point, we're going to start bending our ends in. So I'm going to bend around the curve of this plier. And so this is the part here that's going to bend. I'm putting my thumb on the plier, and I'm just bending here. So I'm just going to bend in a little bit, go to the other side. So I want to make sure I'm holding it parallel. I don't want it angled like that when I'm holding it. Hold it parallel. Thumb on the plier, just push against this part here. So we're just bringing them slowly together, or slowly down and then together. If you have a smaller ring, your plier might be way closer to the end. My ring's a bit bigger, so I'm a bit further away from the end. So it's almost directly across. It just needs to come down a little more. See that? So it's pretty flat on the top now.
But that's okay that they're
I'm going to adjust that.
cool.
If you have
You can
roll
fix
printed or
that, too.
something, it might be a little off. You can
Sure.
fix that after it's soldered together. But for mine, I'm just going to twist it so that it lines up
That
better.
makes sense. It's nice to know you can fix it if you
Yeah.
go. Oh, yeah.
So I am going to do that now. So I'm holding one side and just pushing it so it's across from each other again. This side is slightly higher, so I'm just going to pull that down. So it's pretty even now. So now I'm going to feed one under the other. Without bending it down, I'm just lifting it, and then I'm going to go like this so that it stops here. Right now it's stopping here. I want it to stop in a bit. I'm going to do that with both sides. Then we have a nice connection. So I'm bending one just slightly under, and then I'm just pushing it in so it stops in further. And then when I bring it back out, you might hear that little snap. So I'm going to put the other one underneath now and do the same. And then I'm going to bring it out just gently, and you hear that snap. And now it's against each other. So I'm just going to do a little bit of adjustment so that they're lined up as good as I can get them. You can feel with your finger too, which might be slightly higher or which might be lower. And you're going to look this way and on this side and feel across the top. So I think that is good now. Yeah, and just remember you're going to check both sides this way and this way because it could be slightly twisted. So just make sure it lines up on all three views. So now I'm going to pick my best side. This is a little bit wider than that, so there's a jump there. But this one's almost the same. So I'm going to pick my best side. And I'm going to use a snap-on disc. And keeping it relatively flat, I'm just going to go across so that it's flush. We don't want to do this because then we might get a dip. So you want to keep this to pretty flat. So now we have a nice flush spot. We just want to do that on one side for now. That's the side we're going to put on top of the solder. Okay, we're ready to solder. So I'm going to turn on the ventilation. The ventilation switch is right here. So we're going to have that running with the torch. It's okay.
It's just my suction.
So for this, I might take this off. Sometimes our solder can fall through the hole. So I'll just make sure your area is clean. So this is the torch. It runs on MAP gas, which is acetylene mixed with propane, now called flammel, and oxygen. Two blurry tanks there. When we light it, we're going to light the gas and then add oxygen. And then when we turn it off, we're going to turn the oxygen off first and then the gas last. So I'm making a mark for a guide for when you're lighting it. So to light this torch, we're going to turn that knob till the black line lines up with this line. So 1/8 of a turn counterclockwise. And then we're going to turn it upside down. We have this electronic spark lighter thing here. So the gas needs to get in there where the spark is. So we need, if we're too far away, we probably have enough gas going, but we're just not reaching the spark. So then I like to turn it over here, and we can increase the gas. And I'm just going to move this a bit. And then you're going to add oxygen. So you're going to slowly add oxygen counterclockwise until the orange disappears. And that would be a flame that we could use for soldering. When we turn off the torch, we're going to turn the oxygen off first, clockwise. It's going to get bright. You're going to think you're going the wrong direction, but you're not. So clockwise, all the way off, and then gas. Later, like I'll be with you when you're first using the torch, but later on there is a reminder here how to turn it on and off. So when we're soldering, there's different solders. There's hard, medium, and easy. So they each have a different melting temperature. Hard has the highest melting temperature, and easy has the lowest melting temperature. So you have, say, a ring with a little heart soldered on top and then a little ball in the middle or something. You could do your seam with hard, then you could solder the heart on with medium, and then your last little ball with easy. That way you're working down in your temperatures, less likely chance of reopening your first seam. So you can work at it that way. And these are labeled hard, medium, and easy, and I've cut these for you in piles. So sometimes I use larger pieces, sometimes I use tiny pieces.
So this is the solder?
This is the solder that I've cut, yeah.
Oh, I
Is
see.
it from silver?
This is silver solder. It's alloyed with another metal just to reduce its temperature, melting temperature slightly. So for today I'm going to use hard solder because I'm going to be soldering other things to my ring later on. And I'll just cut a little bit of a larger piece here. And I call that a larger piece. It doesn't need much, and there'll be extra there that it won't use up, and we can just sand it off. So I'm going to put my solder on a flat area, like so. Whenever we solder, we're going to use flux. Do you want me to get it? I guess someone got the door. Oh, it's Janice.
It's locked.
Yeah. I'm going to add a bit of water to this. So we're going to always use flux. Flux helps keep the metal clean, because when you heat metal it forms oxides. And this reduces the oxides. The solder doesn't like oxides and dirt, so this helps the solder flow. So you want to paint the whole interior of your ring and the whole exterior of your ring. So every time you flux, you're going to stir it up good because it settles really quick and gets kind of a water on the surface. So you want to mix it up so it's more of a paste. So now I'm going to place my flush spot on top of the solder.
That's your good side.
Pardon me?
That's the good side you're putting on?
I'm putting it right on top. Oh, on the front, yes.
On the side.
You can come closer this way. So the one thing I would like to mention is, if you have a piece that's got a texture or something on it, I would have nothing peeking out the front. And then the extra solder will just be blobbed on the inside, because there's going to be extra. For today, and because it's going to be a smooth ring, I'm leaving it stick out so you guys can see when it flows. And then if there's puddle on the front, I can easily sand that off and it's smooth. Okay.
But with any texturing, you want it to be
Yeah,
right up against the
you want it to be
cool.
up like that, yeah. maybe we'll go a little bit further back with the camera while I'm soldering.
Okay.
Just in case it gets too hot. So I should talk about this again. So gas first, 1/8 of a turn, counterclockwise till the black lines line up. Turn it upside down so you can push on that thing to make a spark. I'm just going to increase it slightly more. And then a light. Hold it sideways here. You see if you're holding it too close, you can't quite see how much gas you have. For something like this, I'm going to increase my gas. And you see there's a space there. So I'm going to reduce it just till it touches that tip. And that's about how much gas would be good for a big ring like this. If we were doing a smaller project, we would use less gas. And now I'm going to add oxygen, counterclockwise to turn it on, just till the orange disappears. So a soft blue flame. If we had more oxygen, even though the flame is smaller, it's hotter. That's too hot. So we want it just till the orange disappears. So now I'm going to heat the entire ring. I have to bring it all up to temperature, not just the seam area. So I'm going to heat the back and sides first, and I'm going to do the seam area last. So I'm just going to heat the back and sides. I'm about 1 inch away. I call that the end, but really this is the end, right? But I'm calling this the end. So I'm about this far away from my piece. Inside, outside, sides and back. As the flux burns away, you know you're getting close to the temperature for the solder to flow. Then I'll heat the top for a second just to warm that up and then go back around. And now as my flux is almost burnt away, I know I'm almost at temperature. So now I'm going to heat the whole thing. And I'm going to heat the seam up and down on the inside. And watch the solder, it flowed up. And you want to leave it that extra second so that you can see the solder reach the top. You don't want to stop when it's halfway up. And you don't want to overheat it either. So as soon as you can see that bright flash, like a river of mercury kind of, reach the very top, then you take your torch away. If you leave the torch on it too long, after it's flowed, it can drain back out. So, also, it could get too hot as well. You don't want your metal to get red. So, as soon as it reaches the top, you want to take the heat away. So now I'm ready to, before I turn my torch off, right after you've soldered, if I leave it there, the flux gets cold and then it sticks to the block, like right now. So when it's still hot, I will take a tweezer and pull the ring off of the block. We don't want to force it off or we'll get a big chunk of this stuck to the ring. So we can either just move it to the side or we could quench it. So I'm going to turn the gas off, oxygen clockwise. It's going to get bright, turn it off all the way, and then gas clockwise. And then I'm going to quench that. And then
I thought that. So it's all good.
Is that?
I went, ooh.
And I said, I thought that.
So as soon as it's quenched, it won't burn you, but it might be warm.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what it looks like now. And there's a towel here. If you have flux on your fingers, you can use the towel to wipe your fingers off.
Ooh, it looks
I
kind
know,
of
I
cool
kind
right
of
now.
like that design. So the solder went all the way up the seam?
It went all the way up the seam, but there's a bit of a blob on the inside I can see.
The
So
darker
I
little
used
bit?
quite a big piece of solder. So I can just sand that off after. So now we're going to take this, we're gonna leave our metal tweezers, our steel tweezers get left at the station. And we're gonna go over here to the pickle pot. So when you're done soldering, always check, there could be someone soldering at this station too. And just turn the fan off. So this is the pickle pot, so we can just drop this into the pickle pot. So it's a chemical solution that will remove all the oxides and the flux. There's burnt flux on there and it's kind of sticky, and it'll remove all that and bring it back to the silver color. And then we will neutralize it in baking soda and water, and then we'll rinse in here. So this is a chemical called pickle it. They don't reveal what it is, but I think it's citric acid, which is a food grade substance. I used to use Sparex, which was bisodium sulfate. Yeah. So I've switched to a little bit of a lesser toxic pickle. So I'll leave that in there for a couple more minutes, and then we'll make it round and do all the finishing. Any questions?
Do you just go by the visual when you take it out?
Visual or like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. If
And
it's
then the
hot,
other
it
ones you
works
just dip.
fast. Yeah, the other two you just dip.
Okay.
And it works fast. If it was like the beginning class and it wasn't hot yet, it would take longer. But once it's hot, it's pretty quick.
What if you forgot a piece in there?
Maybe overnight or a couple days it might fit.
Okay, but it takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to really forget about it.
Yeah, I think so. Any questions? Other questions?
So you do like texturing, and then you do the bend and all the stuff that you showed us, and then if you wanted to change the coloring of
That's
patina,
later,
that's
later,
like
later,
way,
later.
way.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured. I was like, that would ruin everything if you did all of that.
Because that can also burn off, so you want to make sure
Yeah.
all your soldering's done.
Okay.
Finishing.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we want to make like 2 stacking rings, we'd have to saw that piece, right, in half?
Yes. So if you're making a set of stacking rings, or 3,
Yeah.
that are all going to be for the same finger, then I would true up my ends on both sides first,
Okay.
and then saw them
Okay.
2 or 3. That way you don't have to do that
Yeah.
3 or 6 times.
What would happen if you used that?
That doesn't cut straight.
Okay.
It kind of stretches as it cuts.
Okay.
So it
More
draw
work
a
in the end?
line, or, I mean, you could, but it's not as precise as sawing. But yeah, it does, it also crimps kind of your edges.
You also mentioned soldering things onto your ring. So do you need to file at all to like make it attach better? Like I'm thinking clay terms, you know,
need
like where you
to, no, not
score.
like that, but
No, but yeah.
you might want to match the curve. Say you had a little heart cut out, you could match the curve to the ring curve, so that it's,
Gotcha.
you know, it's against on all sides rather than kind of sticking up on the edges. So there's the swagging block we used a couple of classes ago. You can match whichever one is closest to your ring
Okay,
to create that curve.
for sure.
So I think it should be ready now. So yeah, I just dipped, and that neutralizes, and then rinse. And then just make sure your piece is dry before you go back to using the tools, because we don't want our tools to be wet, because then they can get rusty. So that's how much oxides it took off. Oh, cool. So our next step is going to be to make it round. So we're going to use the mandrel. So all the mandrels for the class are in the can behind behind the hammers there. So, and then we're gonna use a rawhide mallet. So, especially when we use the hard solder, we wanna go slow as we're hammering it round, because it seems to be a bit more brittle, so it can suddenly open up for some reason. Even it's a strong bond, it just doesn't like sudden stretches or whatever, hits suddenly. So I'm just hammering the corners, bringing them down. I'm going to alternate as I go because it's a taper. Just go gently. So I'm hitting it straight on, I'm not hitting it down the mandrel, I'm just hitting it against the mandrel. So now that it's almost round, I can go ahead and hit it harder now. And I'm going to turn the mandrel as I'm hitting it. Keep going till it looks round on both sides. Just going to do a little bit more. I think that looks all right.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Stay stuck. Could you stack like lines on top of it, like a spinner?
Like another band?
Yeah.
Kind of like that picture up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could put a band over top of another band.
It would just have to be larger.
Yeah, once you make your base band, you're going to measure it
Okay.
and then add a little material or a little bit of maybe a millimeter, and then that'll be your measurement for your outside band. So now that it's round, I'm going to get rid of the high spot here, and I'm going to make both sides nice and flush. So if it's too much, you might start with a file. If it's just a little, you'll start with the 150 sandpaper grit. But I could remove just a little bit of that with the file first. And now I'm just going to use the 150. So do that till it's flush. I'm just going to do 1/2 of the ring so I don't spend too much time demoing. So when it's nice and flush like that, And then the next step is to use our half round needle file. I like to use the new ones. And we're going to get rid of the little sharp edge on the interior with this. So we're using the half round part of it. And we're at about a 45-degree angle. The file only cuts on the upward stroke. I'm also going across as I go to make it nice and smooth. Don't remove too much or it'll get pointy on the edge. Just want to round it off a bit. So a nice gentle curve. You can feel how much smoother it is already. So to clean up the rest of the interior, we're going to use the sandpaper wrap mandrel. These have the 280 grit on them. And we are going to clean up our seam as well as any imperfections on the inside. So I'm just holding it away from the bench pin. I'm looking at it from this side but inserting it from this side. And I am just going back and forth. So the seam should disappear if you have a really good connection. And then once you've cleaned up the whole interior, that part I just filed, I'm just going to go over it again now with the sandpaper, just to smooth it out a bit more. So I've only done half the ring, but you can see where the seam was. Okay, so that's the two tools we use for the inside, the half round needle file and the sandpaper wrap mandrel. For the outside, for the edge, we're going to use the snap-on sanding disc, just for the edge, not for the surface. You're going to take advantage of how it bends and just do the edge. And then because I have a smooth ring, I can now sand it. So I didn't do any sanding to this surface at all. Whereas if you're going to do a texture first, you're going to do the sanding up to a 400 grit first. So depending on how many scratches I have, or if I have a big seam showing. I think for this ring, I'm going to start at 320. So I can work on my seam. So I'm going to go with the curve of the ring, rather than this way. So with the curve. So you're going to work on your seam till it disappears, and then you can go the rest of the way around. And then you can go ahead and switch to the 400 grit. And whenever you heat up sterling silver, fire scale is going to develop, because silver is 925 parts fine silver and 75 parts copper to give it the strength. And that copper creates a fire scale just under the surface, which is easy to see if you put your metal on something white. And especially the shinier it is, the more apparent it is. But you can see these pink stains. Can you see that? Those pink stains? That's called fire scale. It's on the inside as well as the outside. So that always happens when you heat up sterling silver. So it will remove. I can sand it all out or buff it out. But if you have a texture, you're just going to live with it. It'll be more uniform. It won't be more as blotchy because it's your indented areas are, you know. And if you patina or something as well, you don't have to worry about it as much. You could buff it when you have a texture, but it's going to take your texture. It's going to really round out your texture. So it's just something that happens with sterling silver. So once you've sanded the 400 grit, sometimes I'll just brass brush it and have a mid shine. If you want a high polish, you're going to sand the 600 grit and 1000 and then do the buffing machine, the gray star and then the rouge if you want a high polish ring. So I'm just doing the side and then the edge where I did the snap-on disc. Just smoothing that out a bit more with my 400 grit.
Is brass brushing this one?
The one at the sink with
That
detergent,
one? Yeah.
that is a lot, a finish I often use, and it's a mid shine. I can show you that in a minute.
So I guess there isn't really a way to eliminate a seam if you've done texturing that.
Well, if you have texture and you have everything was done, you know, good, lined up, then say you had a hammered texture with a round-headed hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could use a rubber wheel and you could imitate your texture by just kind of sanding out this area and then this area.
Over top
kind
of
of
the seam? to,
imitating it.
In the
Yeah.
seam.
blend it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was wondering if you did
yeah.
that, how would you kind of
Sometimes
mask it?
I'll use the corner of a 400 grit and just kind of get in the seam area. You know, just depending on what kind of texture you have. Just ask me and I'll try and come up with the best
Yeah.
way to
Yeah,
do
'cause you don't
that.
necessarily want like a big line.
What's that?
I said you don't necessarily want a line going
Right,
through.
you
That might be
don't.
what your
Ideally,
style
you
is,
don't.
but Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So that's it for this. I'll do the brass brushing in a second, but I encourage you guys to start on your rings now, even if you are in the middle of other projects, just while it's fresh in your mind, to get a start on it. Let me know if you need any help. It's all a brass brush now.
Great.
Thank you.
On the very beginning, I did